Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Advocacy Action Center. I'm your host, Crystal Rogers. I'm on today with Sharon Weber, and we are talking finance. So, thank you so much for being here today, Sharon. Could you start by telling our listeners a little bit about your background and how you came to focus on empowering families through education, financial
Okay.
education?
So, a little bit about me. I have been, first of all, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure talking to you always, Crystal. And I'm so glad and happy and proud of you that you started this podcast because it's really needed for people, right? You have been serving the community for I don't even know how long, but I know it's been a couple of decades, right? Um, and kudos to you because this is needed, and I'm proud that you were able to start this.
Thank
Uh,
you, Sharon. Thank you.
so, hello, my name is Sharon Weber, and I'm a licensed financial professional. So, a little bit about me: I was an advocate for a couple of decades, mostly focused on um, educational advocacy, right, and advocating for families of children with special needs regarding services and supports, right? We know how that is, how that could be, and it could be a strain trying to find the right supports that your child needs, right? Without having that circle, right, that you need, right? So I did that for decades, and then you know, the the term now is life be lifing, right? Right. The young term is life be lifing, right? So married, have two kids, um, one a daughter and a son. My daughter is going to get preparing to go off to college, and was preparing to go off to college, and then I have my son is diagnosed with autism,
Okay.
and at that particular time, I was going through a uh, really nasty divorce, right? Um, so it was difficult. It was difficult financially. It was difficult emotionally, and mentally, honestly. However, for my own um, mental health, I needed to step out on faith and change that trajectory, right? Because it just wasn't working. It was very uh, unhealthy for me. And I didn't realize how unhealthy it was for the kids, right? And that's what's most important. So, and stepping out, right, and going through that divorce, a lot of um, financial where I was financially shifted, right? Meaning we had two incomes, we had a house, and we were both paying towards the bills, right? And then it shifted, not kind of, it dramatically shifted, right?
Wow.
Where
Wow.
um, going through the court process, right? That's financially straining, right? And then not having a partner who steps up and says, I'm gonna silo what I feel for you and do what's right for the kids, right? So I did not have a partner like that, right? Um, so I was, I found myself really struggling financially, right? My lifestyle shifted dramatically. I was still mentally dealing with, you know, not having a husband we were married for 19 years,
Wow.
and realizing that I had to still support and take care of these two children that I have, right? And while my daughter's looking at colleges, and I had to figure that out, right? So
It
And I
sounds
didn't
so
want to be the one.
scary. Listening to your story, Sharon, it just sounds so scary that for 19 years you have a financial partner, and then all of a sudden one day you're just on your own, especially in
Mhm.
a special circumstance, having to support, your son, but also with your daughter ready to go off to college.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. So, ironically, during that time, I mean, I'm a faith-based woman, right? So, I really leaned heavily in on my faith, right? And I, really gave a lot to God, right? And you know, understanding that, this too shall pass. In that same time, someone stepped into my life that showed me um, how I can begin to get out of the financial, um, the financial where I was financially, right? That's financial struggle. So I began by meeting, first of all, with that person, and in that, the opportunity arose for me to be able to share this with other people, right? And like again, I'm an advocate by trade, right? So so I just decided that, for me, understanding like the statistics on just like families of children on the autistic spectrum disorder often face significant financial challenges that
Mm-hmm.
can impact the overall net worth and economic stability. One is, like, just to give you some statistics, a study published in pediatrics found that families with children with ASD experience an average of annual income loss of 6,200, um, equating to 14% of their reported income, right? Out of pocket expenses, approximately 34% of families with children with ASD, autism spectrum disorder, reported annually out of pocket medical expenses, 3% of their total household income. And you know, caregivers, and I know you've heard of this too, caregivers often reduce their work hours or leave their employment to take care of their child because they're always getting calls from schools, sickness, doctor's appointments, all of that. I mean, um, children without challenges have that too, but I think we have it 10 times fold, right? So a
Yeah,
study
I've heard so
indicated.
many stories of parents having to leave their careers or take a job that pays less so they can accommodate their child. And I think that there's a public perception that there's some magical support for families that have disabilities. And really, when you're a parent, there is not.
No.
There's just not the financial support, the medical support, available to us that would be assumed. And so,
Mhm.
thank you for pointing that out. I just hear that so many times people have just entirely had to leave their careers based on a medication that their child needs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, over half, one other statistic, over half of children with ASD live in low income households, with nearly half of these families experiencing difficulty in affording basic needs, which means food and housing. And that holds today as we speak, you know, especially in the state that we're in. So, with that being said, yes, I feel like it is a service, right, and a mission for me to be able to not only share information with families, but also um, help them to get in a better place to be able to support their family financially.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. For families who may feel overwhelmed, how can they begin the process of educating themselves without feeling like they have to learn everything at once?
Okay, so for families that are feeling overwhelmed, they can actually start with just one question. What is your biggest financial worry? Right? I mean, we tend to overthink it, like, oh my God, I have this, and this. But sitting back, first of all, and being quiet for a minute with your own thoughts and really seeing where you are. Like, in other words, what is the number one thing, or even two things financially, um, that you worry about, like on a regular basis, and then begin to get resources to to help you with that, right? Whether it be transitional planning, whether it be creating a will, right? Because we didn't even get we're not we didn't I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but especially with us that have um children slash young adults with disabilities, we need to have a will to be able to decipher, like, specifically who gets what goes where, so there's no misunderstanding. It's not if we pass away, it's always when. And we don't want to talk about it, but that's the real deal, right? So yes, or about life insurance, the right, what life insurance should I have? And if I have life insurance, would I want to know sooner or later if it doesn't work the way I thought it worked?
Okay. So you are a natural advocate. What role does advocacy play in empowering families, particularly those with special needs? When you're meeting with the family with special needs or having this conversation, what role does advocacy play there?
Okay. So advocating is a general statement, first of all, right? We know that. But breaking it down to what I do, I help families change their lifestyle, right? Um, Change their uh, financial, help them look at their goals, right? And develop a plan, right? An actionable plan, right? That works for them to meet their goals faster. So, what that looks like is um, to, like, compare it to an individual education plan,
That's
right?
what I'm
It,
thinking. I'm like, so it's
right?
very individual, very family
Very
centered,
individualized,
specific.
right? Very individualized. So the way, I mean, that term, everyone, on your that's listening to your podcast should be familiar with IEPs, right? And that's basically a map in the time frame that will help your child get from A to, like, B, right? Right, like not necessarily C,
Right.
but B, right, in a certain time frame,
Okay.
right? So I develop an individual financial plan,
Okay.
which is similar to an individual education plan for families to get from that A to B. And then we get from to B, we reevaluate it again, because things are always changing, like we know with IEPs, right? We're always changing. And then we reevaluate where we are. Did we meet the goal? Do we have to tweak things? And if we met the goal, what's the next long-term goal? Make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. How can families, communities, how can we come together to create stronger support, like through advocacy, to make sure that people have access to this type of service?
Okay. So really, the fastest way is to share this information with a friend, right? To share with each other, right? Also to connect with each other, right? You have a lovely organization. You have been advocating for as long as I've known you, right? And I feel like, some people take the information, learn information, and keep it to themselves, right? Um, I feel opposite of that. You know, take the information, get the information, and share it with as many people as you can, right? And then connect and really connect with like-minded people, people who want to know more, right? People who have the resources that you need, right? In reference to financially, you know, I was going to leave it until the end, but um, for your listeners, I am willing to provide a complimentary financial needs analysis. And that's just beginning to see that one thing, your biggest financial worries, right? Maybe the top three, right? Where you are financially, right? What you have coming in financially and what you don't have coming in. The top three things that you should have, right? In reference to beginning to build your financial house if you don't already have that built, and then putting an action plan together that works for you, that's not too overwhelming financially for you, that won't take the brunt of the money that's coming in, right? And to make sure it's sustainable, right? Because that's important too, sustainability.
Okay. So I'm thinking about like what skills, what skills will families learn through this process? I'm hearing you and saying once you learn it, once you go through it, sharing the information is key. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
part of the reason why I invited you on is that I lost my mom 2 years ago, had to go through all of the planning for her services and making sure
Mm-hmm.
all things were in order for her
Mm-hmm.
estate. And it can be overwhelming, but that
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like put me into gear to put things in place for my own family,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that this day is coming for all of us, like you said. So I'm wondering I have this channel, I'm an advocate, I'm going to be advocating, but what are some leadership skills that you think that your everyday person can develop through this process?
Understanding where they are financially and understanding where they need to be and the beginning steps, right? So it's not handling everything at one time, it's taking baby steps in order to change your financial house, right? To set yourself up for success, if that makes sense. Understanding about able accounts, right? And what the benefit of that is, right? Understanding life insurance, right? And what type of life insurance you should have versus um, the life insurance that you might think that you might have and it doesn't work for you, right? And your family in the long run. Understanding that is key, right? And then understanding what you should, if you don't have it already, what you should start to have in reference to accounts, right? Meaning savings accounts. What type of savings accounts? You should always have a savings account for immediate needs, for like say if your car breaks down, or if something breaks down in the house, which look, that's always the case. If you have a house, like something's
Hmm.
always gonna there's always gonna be a need, right? We know that.
Yeah.
um so we want a savings account, because a lot of people, if you ask them, do you have um maybe $2,000 in an account that you can pull for emergencies, in general they would say no, I don't have it, right? um that's a problem.
Yeah. Folks are pulling from their credit card, now paying ridiculous interest.
Absolutely. Then we get into interest rates, and credit cards are not our friend. I just, and we could get into that at another, like,
Yeah.
talk about that into
That's a whole nother
another whole
conversation, debt, right?
podcast. Unless you're using the credit card and paying it immediately off,
Yeah.
credit cards are not our friends. And in general, I'm not saying everybody, but in general, we, especially black and brown, we don't do that.
Yeah.
We don't use the credit card and then immediately pay it off,
Yeah.
right? Um, so we need an account for that. We need an account for longer emergencies. Like, so say if you lose your job, I talk to people all the time and they say, I'm good. I got a good job,
Yeah.
right? A good job, right? Which is great. You got a good job, right? But is there a really good job? We're seeing it now. Federal workers thought they had a good job.
Yeah.
Government, people that were working in the government thought they had a good job.
Guaranteed
And they were
employment.
laid off,
Right.
brought back, laid off. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like now they're in a ping pong, what
What's
is it
actually
called?
going
Ping,
on with their
right, going back and forth.
benefits, their
Benefits
investment
and
accounts that they
everything.
have through their employer. Yeah, all
Absolutely.
those things are vulnerable whenever
Absolutely.
you're.
And if nothing else, people need to understand, especially, my heart is, it's personal to me for families of children with developmental disabilities, right? Um, but we need to understand that we should have a policy, life insurance policy that you own, right? That if something happens with your job, that you still have, and you know what's in it and you understand the lingo,
Yeah.
right? Fine print and all.
Yeah. No, I had a job, Sharon, that I was employed, and when I was hired, the death benefit was $100,000.
Mm-hmm,
And then, sometime without notice, it was literally cut in half.
mm-hmm,
And, when I went to purchase life insurance, I started with my husband because he didn't have employer
mm-hmm,
insurance. But I knew that changing employers, I would not have access to that, or it would change. It would be and I just needed that security to know that in that time, that in between time, I just needed my family to be protected. And so, I'm understanding what you're saying, and like what's important, what's
mm-hmm,
happening with you as a family, and
mm-hmm.
what are those next steps, because you're not going to
Right,
do it all quickly.
right,
It's a
right,
journey. It's
right,
a
right.
financial journey, right?
Exactly. And the third one, I don't want to forget the third account, right? Because I named two, right? The third account should be a retirement account.
Okay.
So it's nice that you have a 401k. Again, the 401k is linked to what? The job,
Right.
right? Although you still have that money when as long as you're tenured, right?
Yeah.
You can transfer that money, but it's good to have an IRA or mutual fund or something separate from that.
Right.
And if you are not getting employer's match, you should think about, highly think about considering opening an IRA separate from that, because
Okay.
your interest rate, so the 401k, they're matching, but the interest rate, if you look at what interest rate you're getting, it's really not a lot, right?
Okay.
But with the separate IRAs or the mutual funds that you get outside of that, first of all, it's yours. And second of all, um, you can get, depending on what you want, and we go by you. Again, it's individualized, like where you are in life, how old you are, how long until retirement. And then we provide a portfolio for you that works for you, and to get you as much interest as possible for the period of time that that money will be in there.
Oh,
Make sense?
good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you provide that service?
Yes, yes. So I have a team that works with me,
Okay.
right? Um, so we work with the families together. And so, yes, we do that as well.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm,
That's great to know.
mhm.
All these different accounts. I know it's almost
Yeah,
like first I learned about a pension, then some years later I learned about the 401k, and I knew about the IRA, but recently it sparked interest, and really based on some conversations that we've had, Sharon,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, the IRA is just a different type of option, and you can do different things with each account. Although they're
Right.
all, the main purpose of them all is for retirement.
Right, right. You want, so for our age, you want something that's going to yield, uh, a higher percent, right? Because we're older, right?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Um, and still protect the market where it is now, right? So a lot of people, just very briefly, I'm not going to go again. This is like so much that I can tell you, but the market is down now. A lot of people are scared to put their money in, blah, 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 and so forth and so on, right? But if you look at IRAs like they're supposed to be looked at, like a retirement plan, so
Hmm.
you're not going to touch it,
Right.
right? This is not money that you're going to dip into. This is money that you're putting away for your retirement.
Hmm.
And if we look at the market overall over the last, since we've been adults, what has the market done? It went down, right? And then it goes up,
Yeah.
right? It goes down, goes up. So we're right now is actually the best time to get in the market, because when you get it, it's almost like the shares are discounted.
Right. They cost
Instead
less.
of looking
Yeah.
at it like, oh my God, the market's down. I don't want
Yeah.
money. I don't want to put, I'm scared. I'm da 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 da, right?
More
Look
for
at
your
it as a
money.
long-term investment, right? And now you could get more shares for your money,
Yeah.
right? And then when the market goes up, you'll be in a better place, right? And then you're not even going to touch it when it goes up. You're going to let it ride out until retirement. So it'll benefit you in the long run.
Okay.
So that's when I tell folks.
Thank you for that. And like you said, we could go down that road and
Yeah.
spend just an hour talking about that, but I appreciate you just kind of giving some information that folks can then follow up on or reach out to you
Mm-hmm.
to get more. Now, you
Mm-hmm.
did mention the ABLE accounts, which is one of the accounts that I love
Mm-hmm.
because, people that have disabilities or
Mm-hmm.
receiving Social Security, they are limited by income on how much income they can bring in before those benefits are cut. And the ABLE account actually gives these individuals an option of saving up to $100,000, I believe, in one of
Mm-hmm.
these accounts.
It's
And
actually 19,000 now.
okay, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
is that a year? $19,000 a year they can
This,
contribute?
yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I mean, that's kind of something that I want to highlight because there would be no ABLE account if there was not advocacy and political engagement. And I feel many families don't realize how their voices can impact policy, whether it's tax laws, benefits, or support systems for children with special needs. So, how can families get involved in coalition building to ensure that financial needs of families are represented at the policy level?
So I would say for people to, first of all, get the information, right? Learn the information themselves, right? Um, which, by the way, I do webinars and workshops as well. And we're putting together a workshop in reference to all these things that we're talking about.
Wow. Okay.
So I'll definitely let you know when that is. Um, but I would say, first of all, put your own oxygen mask on first, right? That's what they say, right? So get the knowledge first, but then also tap into your local and state policymakers and groups to share this information and to educate people about how important it is. Because I feel as though a lot of, again, Black and Brown people don't understand. about the ABLE account, first of all, the benefit and that they should have one, right? And what it's for. Um, and then the other piece to it is how they started. Like, what do I do next? Now I know I need an ABLE account, and what do I do? So um, I also do that too, right? Open up ABLE, help families open up ABLE accounts.
Okay.
So just to give a little, so did I answer the question that you
You
asked?
did. You did. Folks should reach out to their policymakers
Yes,
and be involved with those organizations that are advocating for policy. And
yes,
I agree. I always highlight Partners in Policy, which is a national program that folks can tap
absolutely.
into, and just kind of be aware of how legislation is moving or what legislation is moving. So, yeah, I think that you did answer the question well.
Okay, okay. And then also just to give a little, um, like what the ABLE account is used for, to give like a little example, they're like qualified expenses. So in other words, you would have to, I also encourage people who have ABLE accounts to keep their receipts because they're used for specific things like education, health and wellness, housing, transportation, legal fees, financial management, employment, training, personal support system. So, I mean, personal support services.
Okay.
Um, you also get when you're like the NJCAT, when you're transitional planning is another thing once your child gets of age, right?
Hmm.
And you get a certain budget through DDD if you qualify, if your child qualifies for DDD. However, you're still going to need some money. That money isn't the end all be all, right? Because that money, depending on where your child is, where they fall on their kind of qualifying level, is the amount of money that they will be allotted.
Okay.
So, as we know, you know, being independent, even having more support for your children, right? Versus when they're under 18, right? You fall under this bubble of, most of the support, a lot of the support is the educational support
Right.
and right, and the wraparound support, right? Education and the wraparound support, and that is different when you get 21 and older, where a lot of the support you're going to get you have to pay for, but it's usually paid for through the budget. But there might be things, big ticket items, such as housing,
Hmm.
such as, I know you have a housing voucher, but they may have to pay a little bit
Okay.
towards that, right?
Right.
um such as, um, if they go to a day program, right? That comes through that DDD
Okay.
budget.
Okay.
That comes through that DDD budget, but you just don't want them just to do um, the day program. You might want them to do activities outside of the day program, such as swimming, such as music, such as this, right? And yes, we want to use that budget, but a lot of times, like, just everyday things like going to the movies, or doing something that might not be covered in the budget
Yeah.
that you
It's
are
just,
allotted.
it's not going to be enough. What we
It's
know
not
from
going to be enough.
experience, you know, advocating alongside people that actually have disabilities and are navigating, systems and support
Mm-hmm.
services, there's just never enough.
Never
And
enough.
sometimes, you do kind of like need that couple dollars to get a ride or to,
Right.
make ends meet. So thank you for highlighting the Able account. I will have a link so folks can have more information on the Able account. But
Mm-hmm.
Sharon, honestly, I feel like if someone sits down with you as a special needs family, you are so well educated on the different avenues, whether it's families that are caring for a loved one under 18 or over 21, you are so familiar and so well versed with the services, what's available, that I know that you can just be a great resource for families. And I'm so looking forward to connecting folks with you. We've discussed financial education, advocacy, leadership. Can you share one actionable piece of advice for families who are just beginning to think about how to take control of their financial future? But call you, right?
I hate to say it, but yeah, if you're, listen, think about getting serious about it, right? Think about where you are financially and marinate in that for a minute, right? Marinate in that for a minute. And then, get in touch with me. All it takes, the one step is for us to talk about it, right? And we could do, again, one step at a time. What the lovely thing and the beautiful um, experience that I have gotten throughout the years in reference to advocating for people is meeting them where they're at, right? So we don't have to do, everything at the same time.
Hmm.
We can just do one thing. If you want to talk about, what your accounts look like or what you should be doing in reference to getting your house and your accounts in order, or getting a will. How do I do that? Like, what do I do? Um, or the able account, right? Or I don't have life insurance. So, the reason why I keep on harping over on that is because, I've seen where families have passed away and their loved one with special needs are left. I've seen it where they're left to the state. And I'm going to be real with that and say that that's not something that you want to do. That's like leaving your child with a whole bunch of strangers who don't care, right? They're going to regress, they're going to, not talk, they're going to not be cared for properly. So you don't want that.
No, I mean, we advocate so hard for, person centered care, person centered services.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel whenever you're talking about the state or, you know, that level of guardianship for your loved one, you have to be careful because it's not going to be person centered. It's just going to be survival.
Right, right. So, I mean, I would just encourage people to just make that first step, to just make a call, right? Or reach out and just say, I just want to even talk things through.
Yeah,
I don't know where to start. We'll sit down and through just brainstorming on where things are at, I'll ask them certain questions and then we'll start from there. So just, look, reach out.
great.
That's,
Thank you,
just reach out.
Sharon. Do
I,
you
I
have,
have
go ahead.
I do have like a correction to make. It's $16,000 per year, the able account, not
Okay.
19.
And
Okay.
does it max out at 100,000
Yeah,
or not sure off the top
the
of your head?
lifetime contribution is 305,000
Wow.
lifetime contribution.
Okay. Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's good information. Thank you for sharing that. I really want to encourage everyone that's listening, please reach out to Sharon. I will have contact information for her. She is just so well educated for our families. I truly trust her. And I know that you guys will all make progress. It really is about taking that first step. Once you accomplish it, you have so much motivation to step again. I'm telling you.
Exactly.
Before you know,
And
you'll be walking and running, right?
right, right. And if lastly, thank you for that, Crystal. And it was a pleasure being on with you as usual. Um, I just want to say, you know what? I'm expanding. So if anyone wants to join this crusade to help other families, um, basically it's educating families on financial literacy. And we will train you. I will train you. I have a team. You will get trained on this and be able to effectively advocate for families and get paid while doing
Oh, I love it. One of my favorite
it. By
things.
the way,
To get paid for your advocacy. So
get paid.
honestly, you guys listening, I mean, if you're interested in financial education, this could be a road for you. If you're interested in advocating for families, this could also be a road for you. Like, just jump into it with Sharon. She will definitely show you the way. She's
Mhm.
honestly taught me so much through the years that I've known you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to folks connecting and really meeting some of their financial goals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thanks again. Thanks
My
again.
pleasure. And thank you all for listening. The Advocacy Action Center.